YouTube vinyl community, Dennis Wilson fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we are here today to talk about Dennis Wilson's solo album, the only one he saw released in his lifetime, Pacific Ocean Blue. An absolutely amazing, amazing album, released on Caribou Records in August of 1977. It went to number 96 on the US charts and it sold over 200,000 copies at that time. It's since become increasingly rare to find a copy of this thing. It has been reissued on CD a couple of times, most notably in 2008 with Bamboo as the second disc. There's an original copy from 1991 that's insanely hard to find as well on CD, which we'll get into a little bit later. But it did hit number 16, I think, on the British LP charts, which is insane. But this album is absolutely incredible. It's extremely special, and it's something I've been trying to work on for a while because it's such a deep, gut-wrenching, heartwarming, endearing, soulful, painful album from a really deep guy. And like I've said, for as much as we know about Dennis Wilson and how much of a party animal he could have been, he also seemed like he was a truly deep guy who loved a lot and cared a lot and was just could be a really, really sweet person. So, the origins of this album really kind of span years worth of time here because, long story short, after the Beach Boys' Holland album came out, Endless Summer happened, the greatest hits thing picked up again, the Beach Boys just overnight switched back to being an oldies act. They forced Brian back into the fray in the mid-70s for the 15 Big Ones album, forced him on tour, and in that time, Brian was expected to be the main songwriter of the band again after Carl, Al, and Mike, and Dennis, basically all the guys, had taken on such a heavy songwriting role in the late 60s and early 70s to prove themselves as a whole different animal of a band. And then all of a sudden they come back, then the record company says we want Brian back, and then that's it. Overnight, it's gone. All that hard work for nothing, it's just gone. So specifically, Carl and Dennis, it left them really in the dust because Mike and Al were totally all about going out and playing the hits, which is fine. There's a space for that. But Carl and Dennis were the two guys in the band at that time who just wanted to keep moving forward and expanding the Beach Boys sound and seeing what else they can come up with and where they can go musically just to show off being the talented group of guys that they were. And that just never got to be. So Denny had these songs hanging around and then continued to write more throughout the 70s and then more specifically once he landed this record deal. Songs going back to 1974, including River Song, which had been around for a while, and Pacific Ocean Blues. So a couple of things have been hanging around for years that he had no way to get out because in 1974 the Beach Boys were recording, but nothing ever came from that until the 15 Big One sessions happened and then that came out instead. So yeah, so he ran into James William Guerrero again, and he was like, hey man, you can go make an album, you do your thing, don't worry about a schedule, don't worry about pressure, just go in there and make an album, make it as great as you can, and that's what Denny did. He was signed for a 2 LP deal. The second album was going to be Bamboo. Unfortunately, it was never finished, but I do have a review about that video, which should pop up on the side here if you want to watch that. Also, a seriously amazing album, but the heaviest amount of this album's recording started around the fall of 76 when a lot of it was done at that point, and it spread out throughout some of 77 as well. Most of it was done at Brother Studios, the Beach Boys' place, and his voice was getting a little bit rough by this point, but not anywhere as gruff as it would get for the Bamboo album. If anything, the roughness in his voice adds to the pain and the heartbreak and the love that just emits from him in such a raw and direct and honest way that only his songs can do. And I think also by this point in the band's history in the Beach Boys, I mean, they were starting to splinter a little bit. They started to do their separate factions here and there. So there was just discord there, and I think this was an escape for Dennis to just get away from everything, do his own album, hang out, record, put his own stamp on things, and make just an absolutely incredibly beautiful piece of work that I think everyone should hear. It's an absolutely incredible album. In its initial run, it sold over 200,000 copies. It was on the charts for over 12 weeks. There was going to be a tour to support this thing, but due to Dennis having his Dennis behavior, the record company said, let's not do it. It's not selling that well. Let's just not put too much promotion behind it. Let's just let it be. So that happened. The 1991 CD reissue of this thing ended up in a whole like slew of lawsuits because basically people were claiming copyright ownerships over different things, and there were lots of disagreements over who owned what. And so because of that, that CD in itself is extremely rare to find. Very hard to find. I don't own one, but I'd like to get one someday. A ton of people play on this album, everyone, and sing too, and helped arrange. Everyone from Bruce Johnson, Ricky Furtar, Dean Torrance, Hal Blaine, Ed Carter, a bunch of the Beach Boys touring group. There's a lot of people on this thing. I'm pretty sure Carl's on here too, secretly somewhere. And there's a track that was never finished called Holy Man, which was finished, decades later with Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters doing the vocal for it. Because they share a little bit of that same gruffness in their voice, and he did a fantastic job with it. Greg Jacobson helped to finish that one off, and he co-wrote a lot of the stuff on here too. But Dennis plays almost all of the keyboards, if not all of the keyboards. A lot of the drums. He had a really heavy-handed approach to, not heavy-handed, but he was just being involved with the making of this album from top to bottom, and it shows. I mean, it's an absolutely incredible piece of work. So. The first song on here, River Song, I love the gospel choir in the background. It definitely gives off this feeling of you're walking through a really beautiful, clear, cool river. You see this water going downstream. There's a video, actually, where it shows that. That picture always stays in my mind because it sounds exactly like how I would think it would look. The passionate vocals on this thing, the rocking, slick playing, the dense, layered atmosphere that carries this entire album is right off the bat here, saying, hey, this is what you're in for, this is the ride, There's subtle changes throughout this song, but overall, it's just a big, rocking, heavy, dense, layered track. Very fun to listen to. His voice is just absolutely incredible, and the depth and the warmth behind it is what sells it, and what sells the entire album, really. But it's just a fantastic listen. Great, great song. It was also included on the Beach Boys' 10 Years of Harmony Greatest Hits album that came out in 1981. So that's kind of cool. But man, can you imagine if that was on a Beach Boys album? Holy moly. What's Wrong? This song is really cool. It's definitely a 50s kind of throwback with that big bouncy saxophone and piano jumping around. It's got that old school rock and roll vibe, but the lyrics themselves also lend to that vibe. It's definitely a relationship-y song, which, common for like a 50s rock and roll thing. But what I like about it a lot, and he mentions it a couple of times in this album, is how much he loves rock and roll. And he loves how much rock and roll continues to save his life and always be there and be a source of inspiration for him. And I can relate to that. I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's not cheesy to say you love rock and roll. I mean, it's maybe now it might be considered a little bit, only because rock music in the mainstream sense has long been dead, but you never know. I mean, I personally think it's cool to say that, so I think it's great that he just admits openly, I believe in rock and roll. I think it's great. And then things start to drop in the tone a little bit. You get to Moonshine. And when I say drop, I mean get heavy in a fascinating, beautiful way, epic way that we've come to know from his songs over the years, that they can be very, very intense and very, very beautiful. So you get the song Moonshine. Extremely thunderous low end. I mean, that bass and that piano, it's just a really lumbering drum rhythm in the background. The whole bottom end is just crushing. And like playing it through the speakers I have here, it just sounds so good. But his voice is so honest and pure and direct and just full of soul. And any little tiny crack that might happen as he sings just adds to the experience of how truly intensely he felt about getting his point and his message across, that like this was what's going to happen if there's any little tiny imperfection. That's part of who I am, and that's what you're going to hear. It's just an amazing track. It's totally beautiful. It's an amazing song. Friday Night. This song is really interesting because you get this weird moody long intro, not long, but this moody intro that lasts probably 30 or 40 seconds, and then it kind of blasts into this really heavy rock beat with Dennis just screaming his ass off. And I love the gruff vocal approach in this one. So this is where his partying and his hard lifestyle really pay off, especially when he starts to yell a little bit. It really lends itself to the performance a lot and gives off the image and the feel and the atmosphere of a Friday night. Going out and doing your thing and believing in rock and roll. Dreamer is a really cool song. You know, when you get to that line on there, let the wind carry your blues away. I mean, what a great line. What an absolutely great line. And that's what I love about this album, too. There's so many really standout lyrics on this thing that, like, either are about peace or letting things become peaceful or trying to shed your blues away, which is a common theme in a lot of the Wilsons' work. But on this album in particular, it's just loaded with that imagery. The bass harmonica on this thing, the really airy organ, the crazy horn sections that create a really cool, exuberant, joyful bits of inspiration that happen throughout this track. Really playful. Overall, the song itself is kind of sly. It's got a cool shuffle to it. But man, what a song! Thoughts of You, man, this is a tender track. It's sweet, it's honest, and then it builds into this heavier, dizzying epic. Wow, I mean, it's one of those things where like song construction, like how the hell do you write that? Like these Wilson brothers were so freaking talented. You got Brian doing his like Pet Sounds and Smile type arrangements, and you got Carl doing his whole Long Promised Road, Feel Flows kind of stuff. And then you got Dennis doing his Pacific Ocean Blue album. Like, these guys were so insanely talented in their own little different ways. Just incredible. What a gifted family musically. Side 2 starts off with Time, and the lyrics don't get more brutally honest than this track. It's like saying, hey, I get around from town to town. No matter how much he wants to party and be with all these different girls, he knows that there's a love there that's waiting for him. And that's what keeps him grounded, or at least tries to. And for that, he is eternally grateful and eternally dedicated to trying to make that happen. It's just an amazing song. You get this little bit of a trumpet solo, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it just blasts into this funky jam. It just rollicks the whole rest of the song through, and it's completely unexpected because the first half is just like him and a piano, and then that lonely trumpet, and then boom, you're lost in this funky epic jam. It's so good. You and I, this song is great. It's a little more lighthearted. I love the heartwarming vibe that it gives off. More major keys, more sweeter production. It's a little softer, a little lighter, which is good because after the last few tracks, you need that break. I think that's a nice little break to have there. The really smooth guitar work on this song sounds like something that would have been on Brian Wilson's No Peer Pressure album. For some reason, I'm getting a real heavy vibe on that. Like I could see Brian doing this song these days. Great track. Then the title track here, Pacific Ocean Blues. It's a total classic. It's stomping, it's ripping, it's funky, it's soulful. It's a hell of a groove. I mean, if that song doesn't make you move or shuffle your feet, wake up, man, because that's a hell of a groove. And what a message about ecology and just like watching out for the water. It's basically like a better version of Don't Go Near the Water or something. It's just a heavier rocking straight up front. We live on the edge of a body of water, and it's take care of the animals that are there and take care of the earth. And just, this environmental aspect approach of looking around and seeing how terrible the environment's treated. And he's like, it's no wonder the Pacific Ocean is blue. People are treating it like crap. Like, take care of your earth. That's what he's basically saying. Farewell, My Friend. Very peaceful, but there's touches of, like, sound effects, almost like you were in a jungle, which kind of gives it a very atmospheric vibe that separates it from the rest of the album. Nothing else on this album sounds like this song, but I love the fade out with just his voice on this one. Very enduring, heartwarming track. Rainbows is a very nice, lighthearted song. Very, very happy. There's excellent background vocals that sound very much like a Beach Boys song. This could have been a Beach Boys song. Great, snappy, bright guitars, and there might be a mandolin in there somewhere sneaking around. I love the drop in the pre-choruses to the minor keys, so you get a little bit of that rest of the album feel, but mixed with this newer, happier sound, which I think makes a big effect and in the dynamic of the song itself. And then End of the Show is heartbreaking. It's raw, it's honest. The slight cracks in his voice again add to the performance of this is me. Everything's not perfect. You got this in a couple of takes. This is what it is. I love the little guitar riffs that happen throughout this thing, and then you get this huge build-up that just cascades together. From the music and the voices together, building up in this cacophony. And then you get a nice little applause at the end, almost like, this is the end of the show, here's your clap, see you later. So here's the full cover. Let me just show you this. So you get a nice big picture. Well, it looks like I'm standing next to him. Yeah, great shot of Dennis there. And then the inside jacket is great. All kinds of good pictures of him hanging out, or him and his kids, um, being out, hanging out in the country there in the recording studio. And I'll show you the record itself here. So you've got the lyrics, which are great to have on one side, and then just the name of the album on this side. But even if you were just reading these lyrics alone, without even hearing the music, some of these lyrics are just absolutely unbelievable with how poignant, direct, and just brutally simple, but insanely heartfelt they can be. To take something like the song Time, home sweet home, I'm going home to where she waits to share a love with me. I'm the kind of guy that loves to mess around, know a lot of women, but they don't fill my heart with love completely free. Like, what a freaking line. I mean, like, this guy was just so deep. I mean, there's just so many. I can sit here and just look at all these words. There's a repeated phrase of "take me there" that happens throughout this album. There's a few songs that mention the phrase "take me there," which I think is interesting. But overall, I love this album. It's extremely special. It's something I wanted to take my time on and really put some focus and effort on because it deserves a lot of attention, a lot of love, and the right frame of mind. It's a fascinating album. There's so many aspects of musicianship and songwriting and just an intense amount of love and dedication put behind this thing. When you make something, whether it's food for your friends or family, or you draw a picture for somebody, or you make an album, and you put 110% of yourself into that, that comes across. If you half-ass something just for the sake of putting something out there or giving it to somebody, that also comes across. It shows. And so Denny Wilson dedicated himself to making this absolutely, truly beautiful piece of art, and it shows, and you feel it. No matter what generation you're in or from or what time or what year it is, if you hear this album, you're going to feel something. It's absolutely incredible. So with that, 10 out of 10, hands down, no doubt. This is an absolutely essential piece of Beach Boys discography. If you don't have this, go buy it. Go find a copy. It took me years to dig this thing up on vinyl. Years. I don't do a whole lot of record buying online. It would probably be easier, but there's no fun in that. You gotta go out and dig. So I finally landed on a copy of this thing, but I've had the CD since it came out in 2008, but 10 out of 10, hands down, hands down. So let's talk about this thing. What do you guys have to say about it? I'd love to know your thoughts, and that's it. My name is Giggens. This has been Album Reviews with Dennis Wilson, Pacific Ocean Blue, 1977, 10 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.